Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I'm doing one of those shows where I didn't eat before the show started, so I think we can just hop right into the Q&A. Not that I have anything too particular to say here at the start this week, other than, that's right, your boy got his first vaccine shot. The second one happens to be the day of FanFest. Hoping I don't have any bad side effects. Fingers crossed. Anyway, this one was fine. I didn't have anything other than a sore arm. Anyway, let's get to the questions. Thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon for supporting. Also, there's a name. In case I forget to add the name, let me pull the name up because somebody did support over on Patreon in the past couple of days. Lucas, right. They didn't give me a display name, so I'll just call them Lucas. And that should work just fine. So thank you to them for also sponsoring since they are new. And in case I don't add them to the name list because I forget, at least I said your name in the video. Also, thank you to our patrons of Darkness, Khuja on Jenova, and Kurenai Oni. Thank you for going above and beyond with your support over on the platform. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. With that, let's get to the Q&A. All right, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, yo, Mr. Haps. Hey, yo. I have two questions for you. Firstly, are you planning on participating in the live Q&A at the FanFest? And secondly, do you think they'll ever remove the second ring slot since they announced the removal of belts? I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that since they've already removed belts, but I think they said specifically is the glam. People actually do care about their ring glam. That I know it sounds silly to some of us who don't really do a whole lot of glam, but you know, there's a lot of people who actually care about the rings and how they look whenever they're in screenshots and stuff. So I think that alone is a reason why they'll keep it in. Belts had no aesthetic purpose at all, or I actually do think they would have left them in as well. As for the live Q&A, somebody asked me about this on my live stream, and I would never participate in that kind of live Q&A, only because that Q&A is for people around the world to participate in, you know, a video question and answer with Yoshi P. I've had the opportunity to interview Yoshi P and the development team in person through email. I've had dialogues with them before, and I feel like it's not fair if I, as a content creator, were to even try to take one of those spots when there's so many more people that really just don't frequently have the opportunity, especially given the conditions of the world right now, who may have seen him at a fan fest or something like that. So no, I would never participate in something like that where I would be taking the spot of somebody who just doesn't always have the opportunity to do something like that with the development team. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Haps. Hope you're doing all right. Hope the same for you. Which is your favorite Savage raid and why? Now, are we talking about Shadowbringers or Forever? Because Forever adds a little bit of flavor. Because I think Midas had its issues. It had some bugs on top of the issues I'm thinking of. But that definitely is one of the pinnacles. Alphascape was also incredible. And honestly, this last raid tier I really, really liked as well. I have very, very few issues with the way this most recent raid tier was designed. As for individual encounters, one of my longtime favorites has been O11. I know, see, the thing is, I have like fights that I like from a design standpoint, fights that I like from a difficulty standpoint, and they all kind of mish and mash. But when I think of O11, I think it's the right difficulty for the majority of the player base, and it's also not so formulaic as the rest of the Savage fights that were in Stormblood, and even some of the Savage fights that are in Shadowbringers. I really like that Omega's personality comes through. He's a learning machine. You know, he's supposed to be learning and improving, and that fight is every time he uses an attack, again, he adds a mechanic to it. So it's like he saw, oh, that wasn't good enough, I need to do it differently. And it so subtly speaks to the way that Omega functions in Final Fantasy XIV that I can't help but applaud it from all standpoints. It's also just a great fight. So I think I'm going to go with O11 for this answer, even though I know if you ask me at like a different day in a different mood, in a different mindset, I probably wouldn't answer the same. That one would still always be on the back of my mind, even in that situation. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, hello, how you doing with that? Hello. Wow, this was less than an hour ago. You got this in just in time because I even ended stream a little early. Can you give your thoughts on Boshan 5.55? Okay, that's not out yet, so let me read the rest. In particular, do you think we'll be able to use lost actions and fragments from the first area? Yeah, of course we will. That's like asking if we would be able to use actions from the first area in Delubrum. Of course you can. It's all part of the same thing. There's also going to be new actions on top of it, but I mean, your resistance rank carries over, all the save the queen effect stuff carries over. I don't know why you wouldn't think the lost actions carry over. But there will also be, and I'm thinking of doing the same thing, of farming actions ahead and selling them a little bit, make a little bit of money. Got to make that 75 mil back somehow, and that was definitely at the top of my list for a way to do it. So, yeah, there's no reason why that wouldn't be the case. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps, you doing all right? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. First time commenter, I was wondering what your thoughts are on the Feast ranked being discontinued next expansion of the new PvP mode is received well. Don't you mean isn't received well? Aren't they disabling it because they want people to get used to the new PvP and not if it's received? I don't know. Maybe I misread it. I don't pay too much attention in the PvP sections. Hardcore say challenging. Any thoughts on how or if the old Feast top 100 rewards could be brought back in a way that doesn't devalue them? No, I think they'll be devalued if you ever bring them back. The people who want those things want stuff that nobody else can get, nobody else has, or there's so limited an opportunity to obtain it that somebody has to be kind of on equal footing to that person. I don't think there's any way to bring them back without devaluing them. As for how I guess my answer kind of depends on my interpretation. I thought they were getting rid of it until people had time to adjust to the new mode, until they got feedback on it, instead of just having this like wild west of ranked. But honestly, Feast ranked is so screwed anyway that I don't know that I can be, for, against. I don't even really know if I can formulate a proper opinion on it without the experience of being someone who does it and who competes frequently. Because it's just such my opinion just feels like it has no value. So I think we should always have ranked PvP, even if I think they do it terribly. I think they should always have it, but I'm hoping they don't do away with it. I guess that's all I could say. I hope that it's not done away with permanently, because that's how I interpreted it. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey Haps, how's it going? It's going all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Sorry if you've answered this somewhere else, but were you going to review Bravely Default 2? I started recording the Bravely Default 2 review, and I just didn't like the way it was turning out. I was making all the correct points, but when I would listen back to it, I was like, I'm not enjoying this. And that's really an important aspect for me. So I ended up just never finishing it, never releasing it. Just finished the game and I found the job and ability system super fascinating. Love to know your thoughts on the jobs. The jobs are for the most part okay. There's some redundancies and some things that feel really weak compared to other things, but you could really make anything in that game work. I even did a 4-job Fiesta clear of that game. After 100%ing it the first time around, deciding to do a 4-job Fiesta. I got pretty lucky with my job choices, but it ended up being a hell of a time. The final boss kill took almost an hour in the 4-job Fiesta without being able to use some of the crazy OP stuff. I think that this dev team specifically struggles with wanting people to feel like they're super smart and that they figured out this absolutely broken and busted way to play all these different jobs with these insane damage outputs that can completely wipe the floor with a boss. I mean, it was the same in Octopath, when anyone who figured that out had a super easy time. And anyone who didn't thought that they were brutally difficult. And I think that's kind of the case here too. Where they really don't know how to find a middle ground where it's a fairly consistent difficulty most of the way through, and that the super hardcore still feels somewhat satisfied figuring out like really, really powerful combinations. So other than that though, the job, the combat, everything's great. The story, a little underwhelming. I'd say middle of the pack story at best, but I enjoy some of the characters and the moments that they have. Just wish that they didn't take it feels like a few liberties with like making us care about some of the characters. It's like, oh, we want you to care about this character, but we're not going to give you a reason to. We just are hoping that you do. And that was a problem that permeated throughout a few specific characters, some of them more important than others. So, but overall, it was a fun game. I played through it twice, and I would probably play it again, though probably not anytime soon. All right, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hello. Hope your week has been good. Yo, it's been a pretty good week. Got a non-14 related question and a 14 related one. Cool. What's one hobby you'd really want to get into but don't have the time, or one you just don't understand enough to want to? I think cooking is really actually the hobby I wanted to get into, because video games was my hobby for years. Obviously, it became a career choice for me where I can live stream and produce YouTube content, and I really enjoy being able to do those things. It was a slightly different direction than I thought my life would go, but I don't think anyone who gets into streaming really expects their life to go in that direction, or content creation in general. It's just an opportunity of taking something you love doing and being able to earn a living off of it, which comes with its own pros and cons. But for cooking, I've always been fascinated with what people are capable of creatively. I was talking about this a little bit on my stream today. I grew up around a very culturally diverse area. I had Indian friends, I had black friends, I had Asian friends. I got to experience all sorts of things. And then I'd go home and I'd have like chicken cutlets or hot dogs that were cut up on a little plastic plate with some ketchup on the side. I had anything from that, but when I'd go to my friends' houses, I'd get to try, tikka masala or pancit and lumpia, and, I was exposed to so many different things that I feel like that was always of interest to me, but I never really had confidence in it. A mix of doing like stuff like HelloFresh and a mix of just doing some of my own creative cooking has really become a hobby that is a huge stress reliever for me. You know, if I'm not, sometimes I sit there and I wonder, what video am I going to make? I got to make a video. What am I going to do? And I stress over it and I start trying to make a video. And if I don't like it, then I have to start over. I have to cancel it. And that stress from like overlapping the hobby and the career kind of falls apart a little bit, which is where you see those lapses in content creation. Now I take that time and I use it in a different creative outlet. I use it to, you know, work on food, which I think is a nice skill to be able to have. It's a little healthier. It saves a little bit of money. But also, you know, I can still technically integrate it into my brand. You know, I can talk about it on live streams. I can post it on social media. I can talk about it here. And that is a strength I've not really had in the past. And food's universal. So that's been a big thing. So that would have been my answer if I wasn't already working on that as a hobby. Since they're getting rid of belts, and question number 2, since they're getting rid of belts in Endwalker, we're going to be walking around on the moon with pants at our ankles. No, there's no gravity, so they're going to stay up. Well, there's not no... Listen, I don't need to get into that. You can never say there's no gravity on the moon to somebody who understands how gravity works. You can't do that. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. What are your thoughts if they added a slot for that was appearance only? So, in theory, I like the idea of a slot that's appearance only, like a cape. We have some armor pieces that have capes on them, but, you know, some people want something a little bit extra. And I think extra is the perfect term to put it. I think that taking the data from that and using it on something that's appearance only, honestly, I think that you could go 50-50 with that from a decision-making standpoint. I'd love more inventory space for rings, which is something we are getting, or inventory space in other aspects of the game. And I know that, you know, taking away belts is an opportunity to exchange it for, you know, data that can be used in other locations. So for me personally, I'm not too invested in the idea of using that space for something that's purely cosmetic, like capes. But I bet you if you ask a lot of people, they would. So that's a matter of taste. I'd be okay with it either way. It wouldn't really change the way I enjoy the game. So, but it just personally of not much interest to me. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Good morning, noon, evening, or night. For me, it is afternoon. The only one that you missed. So shame on you. Hope you had a great day too. Yeah, I'd say so. I hope the same for you. But for now, with 6.0 at the horizon, what is your opinion about getting the best gear and pentamelding them? Well, you don't pentameld the best gear. You pentameld crafted gear. And sometimes crafted gear is the best gear, but the best gear comes from raids, not from pentamelding them 99% of the time. I think one piece that pentamelds is the Augmented Law Healing Legs? Somebody correct me on that if I'm wrong. I think scholars use that for all the crit and direct hit that comes with that because the itemization's otherwise not great. But whenever you're just getting into max level stuff, grabbing the most recent crafted set and throwing at least the melds, the base melds, maybe one overmeld on them, that is a good thing to start with, regardless of when you're getting in, if you intend on doing endgame at the current max level during the current patch. It's also going to be good for leveling's sake if you don't have gear for those jobs otherwise, but realistically, you should just, week by week, I'd highly recommend everyone make sure that they're capping their tomes and actually buying tomestone gear. You don't have to do the weeklies for the upgrade mats. If you want to, you can. It'll help your leveling process, but making sure that you have stuff that is close to the max item level in the most recent patch, 5.5, before the expansion comes out, will just make those early levels a little bit easier, but it's far from necessary. So it's all just up to you whether or not you want to do raids and stuff now, or if you just don't care and you're just going to do it in 6.0. If you're just going to do it in 6.0, then it's irrelevant. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hope you're doing great. Hope the same for you. There's a lot of text here. Holy moly. I just clicked more like half a second before I started reading it. First time asking a question, starting with 2 right off the bat. Yeah, no, you've got a lot of text here. Okay. A few months ago, Square decided to implement a new system, lets you see which triple triad card comes from where. Oh, I'm well aware of that system right now. Decided to collect them all. Some were really troublesome and some seemed doable without really stressing. When they announced that we will get rewards for having all of them, I had a feeling they would make things harder, and they did. Right off the bat, we had the new G-Warrior card, which is behind not 1, but 3 extreme trials. Do you think they will double down on stuff like this? Because I do not desire to suffer through ultimates or even savage fights just to complete my card collection. So first of all, I want to make a quick correction. It's every card available as of the current patch. However, all that is a set number. Right now, there are 322 cards in the game that you can obtain. I don't know if that number is going up. Probably is when we get to 0.55. But that number, whatever it may be, that's what the achievement is for. So if you can't get that now, when 6.0 comes out, 6.1 on, and more cards get added, you can still hit that number to hit that achievement. So it may make things make things slightly more difficult for you now, but in the long term, you'll still be able to achieve these types of achievements. It's just a matter of waiting till enough cards come out that make up the difference that you otherwise couldn't have done because you're not interested in that content. I think cards from extremes is not inherently a bad thing, especially because we can eventually unsync them and they go a lot easier. You don't have to be a super hardcore person in order to get most of these things. You just have to wait until there's a comfortable level of overpoweredness that you can just do it with a few friends and wrap it up real quick to get things like that done. So I think they will continue to have cards come from extreme, knowing that there is a plan for that in the future. That there is a way that people can access these things eventually with greater ease. Just like you would like a normal raid or a normal, like if you wanted to go back and get glam from another old Savage raid. You can do that pretty easily. Question number 2, do you think they'll ever add another difficulty to trials and raids? I don't think they will. They talk about the difficulties of the number of types of encounters they already do in the game because they try to make them very distinct from one another, and a lot of them don't share difficulties overall. Even Unreal goes through the same QA process as an extreme trial would. They don't just say, oh, just bump the numbers and release it. They don't do that. They do put it through the proper Q&A, and that's why Leviathan apparently is not as powerful in terms of damage output as it would have been had we gotten it normally, and I can totally see that from having done it the last couple of weeks. I'd be okay with it, but I'd really rather see more fights than more difficulties for fights. Main issue I have is extremes and Savage raids, a massive gap between them and their normal counterpart. The thing is, I say this to people who think that there's a massive gap. There is a gap, but more now than ever before, extremes and Savages are a lot about understanding how the mechanics work in normal mode and doing them in a more difficult fashion. So the learning curve has actually made it easier to get into these types of things. I feel like people kind of just downplay themselves. Like, it's one thing to not have an interest in these things. It's another thing to just think you're outright incapable of it. I know people of all kinds that participate in content that is of all difficulties, ultimate, savage, extreme, all that stuff. People with anywhere from people who are just really nervous about it to people with actual physical handicaps that some people would look at and go, there's no way they could do that. They overcome that to achieve something that is noteworthy, that is of reverence, because I can't imagine I would ever be mentally capable of doing that. These people are way stronger mentally and determination wise than I think I could ever be. And so when people just say that we need more difficulties to kind of level the curve out, I think it's not about that. I think people just tell themselves they can't do it, and and that's it. They just psych themselves into thinking that they either need to wait for a guide or they need to it's just above them somehow. I don't know. I don't ever think of it that way. And seeing what some people are capable of and the determination they have, I just never say that about anybody. Just I say work harder, work smarter, and just enjoy. That's it. And don't think about it too much, because I think that's the best way to go about approaching harder content. Yeah, you'll run into some dickheads along the way, but I mean, that's life. Shit, I could walk by some dickhead just walking down the street. I'm not going to suddenly say I'm never walking down the street again, or that street is not good or anything like that, or that street needs to have its curve, its difficulty curve fixed in any way. Extra question, do you think the two worlds will at some point merge together? No. The first and the source, no. They won't. They might as well be in terms of like function anyway, but no, they won't. This one's a quick one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hey, how do you typically take your coffee? AeroPress V60 pour over long black. I just stainless steel French press this shit every morning. That's it. Drink it black. Simple. I don't have anything else to add. That's all I do. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi. Hey. I like how they separated the hi. They're like, you'll see this hello. All right. Have you had any luck with the Ruby or Emerald Gwibbers? So Ruby, I did see a bunch. I actually won one at 98 totems. And one meaning I rolled a 99. But before it fell to my inventory, I actually passed it because I was 98 out of 99 totems. So I was like, I'll just get 99 totems and wait. So I let that one go to somebody else. Emerald, I never won one. I've seen 6 or 7. I did win the Diamond Gwibber, however, with a 64. That took, on my 62nd kill, I won it with a 64. So now I just need to wait till the end of May when 0.55 comes out, and I should be able to buy it with my 99 emerald totems that I already have. So the buff to the drop rate, ruby weapon mounts drop like fucking candy now. The emerald weapon drop rates, I think they did this with Suzaku also, where they increased emerald weapons drop rate by half the amount they normally do, because it hasn't been long enough for them to fully buff the drop rate. This is something that they do that really only happens in 0.5x patches, where because it's like they try to treat the 0.5x patches as this lead up to the expansion, they can't treat the time frames with which all the content from before needs to be unlocked. I suppose it can't be treated in the same manner. So Emerald got a half increase that most of the other amounts have. So I think 5% is the base drop rate. It's probably at about 7.5% right now. A very negligible increase. Then at the end of May, when the mount becomes purchasable, they should finish the increase, and it should go to like whatever the fully upgraded rate is, 10%, 15%, I don't even know. Because that's what they did with Suzaku as just part of an end of the expansion way of approaching the buff rate drops. Think Square Enix will ever add totems for rewards for old fights when a certain number of job classes get added into the game? You mean add weapons to old? No. They've made it pretty clear they don't want to add. They're probably done adding new weapons for most of the old fights. Like raids sometimes old raids get new weapons for new jobs, but only if that job is like a level range that can use the weapon when it starts or higher. So like we'll have Omega weapons very likely for the new jobs when they come out, and we'll probably have Eden weapons for the new jobs when they come out, but they're not going to go back and do coil, or probably not ruby weapon, and not crafted weapons, none of that. I think that they've shown that that's probably going to be the way that they approach it in the future. Hashtag Mr. Everybody's hi, hey, hello, how you doing? Doing alright, I'm doing alright. I often hear folks say that Heavensward, the player base, wasn't as skilled nor as knowledgeable back then as they are now. Would you agree with that statement when it comes to the difficulty of Midas Gordius? Or are those tiers truly more difficult than Savage content that followed? So it's a mix. The answer is actually a combination of the two. Yes, people weren't as skilled back then. You got to remember, it wasn't really until Gordius where the whole tanks outputting a ton of DPS and healers outputting a ton of DPS thing really came to fruition. And it came to fruition because the DPS checks were more severe. So the answer is twofold. People just hadn't... If you go back and watch old Coil, like World First or Clear videos, you'll just see healers sitting there doing nothing sometimes, just waiting for damage to happen. No dots, maybe occasionally a dot or a stone or something like that, but it's hard to watch how inactive healers are. And you'll see tanks just sitting in tank stance, even if they're not the main tank. They'll like turn it off for a few GCs and then turn it back on, and then maybe turn it off when like a tank swap is happening or something like that. Trust me, there's a lot of really weird, funky shit. Not to mention shit like my Bard macros in 2.0, which are not good, and I really, really wish I could go back and tell old me to not do that. But yeah, there's all sorts of things. We were way worse at the game back then. Those fights are not as bad as we remember, but Gordius and Midas still to this day have some encounters that stand up design-wise. And they were made more difficult because the item level scaling on them was more severe. It's really more of a numbers thing for most of them. Manipulator and Living Liquid, I'd say, were actually more difficult than most fights that you currently have. But in a lot of ways, they were harder for the wrong reasons. Manipulator especially. So, mix of the two. All right, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A where we have questions and you answer them. Yeah, but when I read it now, it sounds backwards, so you done fucked up. Anyway, hello, Happy. Hope you're having a good week and acquired your Dragon Zord by the time you're reading this. No, just the Emerald mount. I'm probably just going to wait till the end of May to get that. The Diamond mount was the one I didn't want to wait for, so I'm glad I got that out of the way. My question is regarding limit breaks. Is there any idea how to make limit breaks more than just, hey, let a melee do this? Feels like we only ever use tank LBs if the fight's designed for it, then the healer LB is extremely useless unless it's an LB3. What would you do to improve the system? I found a hard way to make the LB3 make you dash forward and fall off the arena. That can happen with any gap closer, not just that. So it's not just the Monk LB3. I think they're looking for a solution that doesn't need to exist. LB3s function entirely in a way that is easy to understand and easy to execute. If you need single target damage, melee. If you need AoE damage, either ranged or caster, depending on the range you want it to hit. Do you need to resurrect everybody, and is it an emergency and you can save the entire run? Healer LB3. Way too much damage coming out, healers may be screwed up, behind on damage, or you need it for a specific mechanic, tank LB3. Great application of the tank LB3. In Diamond Weapon, a lot of the times people die going into the tower section, And when the meteors are going off, if everyone's dead, if people are dead before the meteors actually spawn, then they'll dynamically change. If they die after they spawn, they won't. I've had plenty of tanks just tank LB3 those meteors and save the entire run. And that's been a very, very good use for it. We've also seen tank LB3 used to cheese a lot of fights in the past, to generate LB3 at points where, because it just generated a mass amount of LB gauge at points where you'd otherwise have to be doing mechanics, but you could just choose to override it by using a tank LB3. And some of these cases are more egregious and more or less interesting than others, but I don't think there's a solution. If I remember people saying, oh, you just get personal limit breaks. Those are what cooldowns are. That's essentially just asking for a cooldown that is like 5-6 minutes, because that's all it would be if they were personalized. I don't think they need to be changed. I do agree that the healer LB1 and 2 are kind of insultingly bad. I think they should at least restore MP on top of HP. That would be the only thing I'd really change. Hashtag Mrhappy Monies. Yo, what's up? I've been feverishly rereading interviews about the Nier raids, and I'm confused. That's fitting. Anyway, many interviews, Yoko talks about writing the raids and his creative process with some hints at Square Enix interference. Well, yeah. No, that's because he wanted to do shit like delete entire characters with the raids. However, in many interviews, Yoshi talks about how writing the raids was a good exercise for his team since it helped break out them out of some of the entrenched habits. He just brought Yoko in to spice it up and look for inconsistencies. Question, who actually wrote these raids? Yoko did. I think you're misinterpreting some of the things that they're actually talking about. So if you watch when Yoko was first unveiled, something that's not in an interview, something that's in a fan fest, when he was first revealed, they talked about what the creative process was like for it and how he essentially writes something, he presents an idea, and it has to go through the scenario team. It has to go through the lore team, Oda-san, and all of the people who work with him, because it still needs to fit inside of Final Fantasy XIV at the end of the day. So that's what actually happens. Yoko writes it all, it goes through a filter, and then we get the finished result, is essentially what it boils down to. But he has, all sorts of crazy stuff that you can still very much see is in there. Yoko-Taro-isms. And quite frankly, what we get as a finished result feels exactly like something Yoko would just write in its entirety, but toned down for an MMO. Which is the big thing that they've also talked about in various interviews and whatnot with him. So that's it. He writes it, goes through a filter to make sure it fits in 14, and then bam, we get a finished result. Hashtag Mrhappy Monies. Hello, Haps. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I want to ask your opinion on harder difficulty versions of Dungeons 24-mans. Man, it feels like an opinion I got to talk about a lot. Obviously, they are initially designed for everyone, but after DR Savage spoiled us, makes me want higher difficulties for both large and small-scale content. Do you think the success and response of DR Savage would be enough to get the devs to look into this, or is this a pipe dream? I think we're overstating the success of DR Savage. Baldessian, I'd say, has had long-term success. DR Savage is still to be determined. I'd say that it was done, but success, that's really, really hard to judge. I think the 24-man using the fancy mechanics that we have with the actions and whatnot, I think just that for a base 24-man is probably a better bit of information to track to see if they integrate 24-mans with these types of like logos actions and stuff in the future as an idea, like we did with DR Normal. As for the Savage, so I guess the real question is, do I think the success and response to DR Savage would be enough? No, I don't think it would be. I think it'd be enough just to sate the people who enjoy that content like you and I, but not the masses, which is really what they're looking at whenever they create that content. I think we can see more stuff that's like Baldessian Arsenal, that's like Delubrum Savage. And I think we will see that very sparingly like we have thus far. Make sure that it's not something that's super frequent and then it gets expected and then it gets kind of dull, and something that they can make sure is spicy each time that we do it. It's largely an experience and not just something where we're going through the motions of, this is the new content, this patch. And I think it's probably better off that way, as much as I would like to have more of it. For smaller scale stuff, I've always said that if they want to do smaller scale, more difficult, I haven't always said this. I've been saying it for the past couple of years, though. That they actually need to go a similar route to what they do with DR Savage, where we have those funky actions, where there's some sort of alternate progression that isn't just our main item level. I think that's the strength this game needs to learn to play to for alternate content going forward. It doesn't always have to be something that is an item level increase, but it needs to be useful to some degree. And when you have gear in Eureka that makes you more powerful, gear in Bozja that makes you more powerful, stuff in Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High, the individual levels in there, the actions in there, the items in there that make you more powerful, I think that's a tool to introduce more difficult low-man content, because you could always bring an extra action. You could always bring an extra item that only works in that content to overcome some sort of deficiency or some sort of situation that would otherwise be pretty challenging for a 4-man group. And if you can make actions and stuff required for giant 48-man groups for DR Savage, you can work on things that are required on that low-man scale probably a bit more easily. Even though there's less people to necessarily bring them, you can still design things with that in mind, because it is supposed to be that upper echelon of content. So I think it is possible, and I think it's the model, but it doesn't necessarily, I don't think it has a resounding success that tells me that they will do that in the future. Hashtag Mr. Smiley Saturdays. It's not Saturday, it's Sunday. Anyway. Also, Haps, hello, and hello to the cat as well. Well, he's not in here, but I'm sure he would not say hello to you regardless of whether or not he was in here, because he's an asshole. Anyway, with the talks of more content for 11 coming out, I started playing a bit again, quit just after the third Abyssy Zone came out, and currently working through Seekers and Rhapsodies. Solid. Following the BG 1-119 guide, excellent guide, I'm a little overwhelmed. Omen, Skirmish, Alluvion, Dynamis, Divergence, Sinister, Rain, Ryzen, Eska, Ambuscade, Remas, Unity, Voidwatch, Walk of Echoes. I'm wondering what are the things I should be focusing on, or rather you focused on, and wish I could leave until later. So getting through your story missions is priority number 1, especially Rhapsodies. There's a lot of bonus experience points, bonus capacity points, and just outright features that are unlocked through Rhapsodies. Not to mention the news story, Voracious Resurgence, requires you to have completed Rhapsodies of Vana'diel. So I'd say going through all of the stories and completing them so you have access to any of their contents or rewards is priority number 1. Priority number 2 is to pick a job and find gear recommendations, and then just focus on the step-by-step gear upgrades. The 1-119 guide will tell you how to get some item levels so you can get through some stuff more easily. It's not really focused on specific pieces for specific jobs. Your goal is to now find, maybe on like FFXI to find a guide that tells you, oh, this is beginner ninja, this is intermediate ninja, this is expert ninja. And to look at that beginner section, kind of look at the things that are on it and the options and things you can easily obtain. Honestly, a lot of upgraded artifact gear or upgraded relic gear will probably be in your immediate future, because a lot of that stuff is universally useful. Some things like a Raha's ring from Chains of Promethea can still be useful when you don't really have many other options. And then weapons are always a big thing. But I think that's what you're going to want your next step to be. Find a guide for your job on either the wiki or FFXIAH or wherever, and try to make that how you determine what your micro goals are. Hashtag Mrhappy. Hey, Haps, how you doing? And how goes the coffee biscuit grind? It's not really a grind, coffee biscuits. I just keep up with it every day, and I get a free 100,000 gil every day. As you know, I love the content, love to stream, so keep up the good work, making the pandemic a lot easier for many people. Well, that's at the very least I can do something for people. Quick question. I used to stream 14 during my static raids, but I got called out by an old static member for streaming, and they didn't want to be on stream at all, and eventually I was kicked because I didn't want to stop streaming because I enjoyed it, and it was good for mental health. Over time, though, the point he made was getting to me, and I just stopped streaming because I didn't want to upset anyone. Wasn't using ACT, wasn't talking about numbers, it was just the fact he didn't want people watching the static. Is this a common problem, and now that I'm thinking about streaming again, is this something I should be worried about? I do actually ask my statics for consent to stream our static gameplay. It is something that I do, and I think it's the most respectful thing you can do, instead of just starting to stream. Now, I do also, no matter what, I instantly assume that even if they're okay with being streamed in terms of gameplay, that they don't want their voices heard. And honestly, it's a liability to have people's voices on comms on a stream, because sometimes people just say really dumb things when they think people aren't listening other than the people in their immediate vicinity. And as much as I don't want to be a company to it at all, sometimes you're just present for it. And the last thing you want is for that to be on your stream, because you are responsible for that. But yes, you should definitely... Now, I'd say in like Party Finder or in like dungeons or just general gameplay, no, you're not going to go asking everyone, hey, I'm streaming, is that okay? And if somebody says no, you leave. No. But if you're playing with people who a static is more of a circle of trust, I suppose, then that can be a little demeaning, I suppose, if you don't actually ask for their permission. So yes, if you're going to be playing with a group of people that you're playing with consistently and whatnot, even then take some extra precautions there. And no, if you're just playing with randos, that's not worth worrying about. Next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi, Mr. Happy. Loving the content as always. Thank you. Hello as well. Just have 2 quick questions. Number 1, I've been enjoying seeing some of your cooking escapades on Twitter. I was wondering if you would be posting recipes alongside the pictures. A lot of the food looks great, and I love trying to make it. Posting it alongside, yeah, I guess you could just load up a picture of everything that was used. I could do that. Whether or not I'll remember to do that, because most of the time I'm taking those pictures and I'm posting them, and then I'm eating them, and I just want to eat. And I haven't eaten lunch yet, so you're just making me think about that. Number 2, I was wondering if you could clarify when in a patch cycle we can turn in a 520 Tombstone weapon into a 530 without doing Savage Eden. I don't know if there's a set period of time. So eventually what happens is the normal mode... Oh, no, that's just for unlocking the weapon. I don't know that there is a point. I feel like there is, or there historically has been, but honestly, I don't do the 24-mans or anything enough to really remember, if anything, when that happens. It would have to be in 0.55 or 0.58. So the answer would either be, in this case, end of May or probably late into the summer. But yeah, I don't remember, in all honesty. Yeah, but that's what my answer is going to be. It's going to be either 0.55 or 0.58. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, how's life? It's good. This is proof of that, I feel. I have 2 questions related to jobs. Sure. One, from the looks of Red Mage and Gunbreaker, they've been trying new ways of stacking skills or changing certain action skills after certain requirements are met to bring in new jobs. I mean, they did this with Warrior, too. It's not exclusive to them, but I feel like they've done it a lot, this expansion. Do you think we'll see more like combining GCD combos? You probably won't ever see GCDs being combined into a single button. They've given a lot of reasons for this historically, and the biggest one is that the only reason it works that way in PvP is because PvP is a largely dynamic experience, which leads to them not wanting you to have to think about how well you perform or anything too specific. They want you to have something that's nice and easy and reliable, and then when situations call for specific buttons, you do have those, and they're separate from that base combo. In PvE, the situations, while they have some randomness to them, are largely static. So it is a test of how much your dexterity and knowledge of the job actually functions in that content. You know, can you keep your cool? Can you keep your nerves? And can you keep something as simple as a 1-2-3 combo going? Because some people, quite frankly, can't. And that's crazy. But if you have nerves, it's not that much of a surprise. Sometimes it's just a fat finger. I think we all fat finger skills from time to time. But some people just literally cannot maintain that nerve to keep even those basic button combinations going at any given time. Some people just stop pressing buttons overall when they see a bunch of mechanics on the screen. 2, do you see them branching out from, and the other way, no to the combos, but yes with other skills. 2, do you see them branching out from the roles now, making secondary roles? No, it won't happen. So what you'll see is jobs with identities. So you'll see, like, for example, Red Mage, a lot of Red Mage's identity is its dual casting, is its ability to chain res people. Summoner is about its mobility. It's about the Bahamut and the Phoenix. Black Mage is about those big juicy hits, the Xenoglossies with the Polyglot, those Fire 4s just blowing everything up, and that big payoff with Despair as well, and maximizing their movement. You'll see that, but you won't see sub roles, I suppose. Now, I do notice that you specifically say how Ninja is a melee but has magic skills. The healer role with a distinct difference between pure regen and shields. They're both in the same roles but play a big part. I guess the way you describe it actually is, it makes more sense, but I feel like we have that already. Tanks, they went away from having tanks that are designed as main tanks or off tanks. It's now just tanks. And the players will determine what is, numerically better to be in each role, but you can do whatever. It really doesn't make that much of a difference. Healers, yeah, they've divided them permanently into these subcategories and putting 2 in each, with Sage. And DPS kind of already have that. We have our magical DPS, we have our range physicals, we have our melees. Would I be surprised to see a melee job with magical skills again? No, not really, because like you said, Ninja already has that, and they could double down on that as an identity. And that's the big thing. It's about identity. All that matters is you are a job, you're placed into a category, and then you have to perform what they've designed for you. How you actually do that, what the actual result is entirely on you. So they can do whatever they want in that way, but I don't think they're going to do it as distinctly as you're suggesting that maybe they would. All right, and that's going to be it for the non-lightning round questions. I think there were only a couple that I wanted to lightning round. There's a lot of comments about the social anxiety comment from last week, and yeah, don't listen. I've had to talk about it a few times this week because I mentioned it in the weekly Q&A, so that's not too much of a surprise. So people talking about the cast timing for fishing using a macro. I don't want to use a macro. Build it into the game, like something that is actually fully functional and on point, instead of forcing us to make macros for little things like that. Because I don't want to use the echo counter, especially because no, you can do 25 lines, but I think the timer can go past 25, something like that. So yeah, I mean, it just built it into the game. There's no reason not to have it built into the game. So when you cast, it starts a timer instead of having to macro all that shit. Anything that doesn't need a macro is vastly improved in Final Fantasy XIV. Let's see. That was another one. Live Q&A. Some people answering questions from last week. Some people enjoying the City of Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. This one wasn't sponsored by it, but I'm still bringing it up. Somebody talked about the strategy breakdowns. Thanking me for those. Had a few that were along those lines. Somebody says right here, there are accounts up that count up to like 25. Yeah, but then some of them have longer. I mean, to be fair, if you're longer than 25, there's only there's very few fish that go over 25 seconds in ocean fishing. I know lobsters can go over 25, and some of the spectrals and sharks can go over 25, but there are very few that go over 25. Let's see. Somebody asked a question about Drakengard and Nier. I don't want to get into it. It was about lore-related stuff. I don't want to talk about Nier anymore. So sorry to the person who asked that. I just don't want to talk about it. I was done. Let's see. There was the tons of text. How do you have your coffee? The player base in Heavensward. Dismay at fending and maiming sets from the Alliance. But I remember I saw this question and I went past it because it was like, how do you feel about, even though the sets look the same, they also very easily mix and match? I don't care. I'd rather they be more varied than all look exactly the freaking same. That's just me though. You can enjoy it for what it is. I won't tell you not to. I'll tell you I won't though. What else do we got? Old AoE markers. Would they update them? I don't think they will. They've had years to do it. They could have done it when Realm Reborn was revamped, but no. I think it's too many. I think it's too many individual cases of things that need to be Q and A'd because every AoE is probably designed in the old days as a non-universal thing. They just used markers to differentiate mechanics. So there's not like they can replace this marker and every single instance of it is a split damage marker. I think that's evident in World of Darkness. There's a lightning marker, which looks like a generic, spread out lightning marker, but it's a split damage AoE. And then you go someplace else and another thing's a split damage AoE. So I think too much of it is designed in such a way that it's not easy to replace. So no, I don't think they will. They could. It's totally possible, but I think the QA that comes with it, I think I said Q&A a bunch of times. The QA that comes with it makes it a bit more difficult. Yeah, there's also AoE ground markers and Shadowbringers with got an upwards glow at the edge. Yeah, when the glow reaches the edge, I believe it actually means that it's finished, or at least that it always lines up with it finishing. Yeah, I don't know. There wasn't a question attached to it. It was just an acknowledgement of it. So, you want Dancing Edge back for Ninja? I just actually joked about that on Twitter today. There is nothing more horrific than a Heavensward ninja hearing their warrior go, "Can you get slashing?" The animation for Dancing Edge is pretty cool, though. I'll give you that. There's somebody asking about retroactive storytelling and how do you compare the value of adding story elements afterwards to the first impressions. I'm assuming this has to do with the Nier raid. There's a difference between adding story elements afterwards, and I guess there's too many different ways it can be applied, because that can be retconning something, that can be laying a foundation and then revisiting it later to explore it further, which I think is an incredibly valuable thing. And sometimes even retconning's okay. It just has to be a good retcon. So I don't have an answer to that, because as long as the story ends up good, that's all that matters. That's it. You said you don't think they'll keep making limited jobs because of the resource load required, which is ironic considering they're limited. Do you think they'll keep receiving updates? It'll go to level 80. We already know that they picked out all the spells from 50 to 80 before it had even released. They told us the number of spells that they had already picked, and we haven't reached that number yet. I think it was 129 or something, and I think we're at 109 or somewhere around there, or maybe like 112 or something. I don't remember. I'm logged into the game. I could just check. I just didn't want to tab over to it. How many Blue Mage spells do we have? Let me open it. We have 104. So there's still, it was either 119 or 129, but they gave us a finished number and we haven't hit that yet. So it will at least receive its level 80 update. Not sure about after that. But yeah, so we know we'll at least get one more update. And whether or not they do any limited jobs in the future, big question mark. So we'll see how that turns out. Bit of comments about toxic elitism versus toxic casualism. And I think these are pretty healthy conversations about people's different perspectives on the different types of people. Like people who are who enjoy the game at a more casual pace, but shit on people who try a little bit harder, versus people who play a lot more, but they shit on people who barely play. And I think we hit the nail on the head last week where we talked about how there isn't toxic casual and there isn't toxic elitist. There's just toxic, and there's people in both categories. And it seems like these are just a lot of the comments were a lot of different ways of breaking that down, because it's the truth. There's every individual group of people is full of toxics. There are people who are toxic casuals. There's people who are toxic elitists, and there's people who don't really fit in either of those categories. They're just toxic. So there's a lot of discussion about that in the comment sections below here. Somebody asking if it's a good time to play 14. It's always a good time to play 14. Just about whether or not you have time to play it or not. Let's see. Is anything else? Is leveling in Bosha going to be? Yeah, Bosha is going to be how people do 71 to 80, without a shadow of a doubt. That's going to be how I do it, almost certainly. Somebody asked a question about the question itself isn't a spoiler, but the answer would be is why does Diamond Weapon fight us? And if you watch actually the most recent State of the Realm, we actually do discuss this. So I would go watch the most recent State of the Realm during the Warlet section. And the answer is right in front of you. You just have to pay attention to what Diamond Weapon says at the start of the encounter, or actually throughout the entire encounter, and that'll answer your question. Let's see. And I think that's it. The rest are just about those about attacking content creators. Somebody commented on bunny chests. I stay sub for bunny chests too. Yeah, that's talking about Eureka. I've actually done a bunch of Eureka Happy Bunny farms in the past couple days. I mean, it's a pretty decent gil off of it. It's free money. Why wouldn't I do that? And yeah, that's going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. If you have a question for next week's Q&A, throw in the comment section of the video below, and I will hopefully get to it. And if it's a bad question, I won't get to it. So ask good questions. That's all I'm going to ask of you. But with that, thank you for watching. I'm finally going to go get some food, and I will see you guys in next week's episode. Until then, take care.